the November 14th, 2024 meeting of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. This is your first time here. We're an open and collaborative group, so you're welcome to jump in constructively with any part of the conversation. And in a few slides, you're also invited to introduce yourself if you haven't been introduced before, or if maybe it's been a long time since you've been here. It's just to help everybody feel a little bit more comfortable interacting. And because we have a number of competing companies here, we also abide by the antitrust policy of the Linux Foundation. So you can read about that at linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. Quite a few items on the agenda for today. We've got a few updates, and then we are going to pick a committee rep for the summit, the Confidential Computing Summit. And we'll check in with everybody on the objectives that they want to help lead for 2025. And I saw a Slack from Paul asking, can we talk about this? And absolutely, this is the perfect thing for this meeting, is to talk through everybody's objectives and make sure that we're partnering up where we can. Over on the GRC mail list, there was a call for us to review their papers. I don't think that got copied to the TAC list, but if Mark shows up today, we'll have him cover what he would like
I'm here.
TAC to review. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to you at that part of the agenda then.
However, have a hard stop at the top of the hour because of a conflicting meeting at work. So I have the next hour, but no more than that.
Okay, well, we'll definitely hit that before then. And then we'll have Tech Talk. I think Bokduk is under the weather today, so Piotr will fill in for the entirety of the talk. And I think I saw Piotr in the list. Yes, Piotr is here. So great. Any other agenda items people were hoping for today? Okay, no votes. But if I just sort of eyeball, I see, well, do we have Nathaniel today? Do not see Nathaniel or David. Paul, I see. Thanks for joining, Paul. Catherine, thanks for joining. Do we have Howard? Don't think I see Howard. I'm here. Henry or Kevin? No Henry or Kevin. Alec?
I'm here.
Thanks for joining. Fritz?
I'm also here. Hey.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining, Fritz. Yash? No Yash yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if Yash pops in shortly. And then Mingshen or Yao. No Mingshen or Yao so far. Okay. All right. Well, those were the voting members of the TAC, and we try to avoid doing too much by vote because we really want to be more collaborative. And this is the part in the meeting where if you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself in the community before, you're welcome to come off of mute and let us know who you are, what your interest in confidential computing is, and where you're joining from.
Okay, let me start. This is Thomas from Samsung. So you can just call me Tom. I'm sorry for not turning on my camera because I have sick kids at home. They're running here around, so I don't want to disturb you. Basically, I'm working with Bogduk and Peter on Islet. That's it.
Great. Thanks for joining. Can I ask where you're joining from today?
Where I'm joining from? From Poland.
Okay. Dzień dobry.
Bardzo dziękuję.
Okay. Anybody else like to introduce themselves?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Piotr Sawicki. I work as a software engineer at Samsung, together with Tomasz. And since last year, I've been involved in the Islet project. And that's all from me. And today I'm going to talk give a presentation about the application provisioning mechanism. Okay. Thanks.
Dzień dobry, Piotr. Right, I think, anybody else who would like to introduce themselves? All right, well, if you were having trouble getting off of mute and you want to introduce yourself later, feel free to do that. All right, last time we met was Halloween. It was a spooky meeting. We had the announcements about what's going on KubeCon today, the TAC chair election, and discussed the opportunity to meet face-to-face at FOSDEM. And then the bulk of the proper agenda was about an update from the brand repositioning working group. So they're always looking for technical vetting of the messaging that they're trying to put together. And then we did a last review of the budget that was submitted to the board, and the board will be voting on that this month, I think. And I guess the short story on the budget is it's more or less flat, but we tried to trim out what we did not spend this year. So kind of rebudgeting to the actuals. Okay, Renu, would you like to take this slide?
Definitely. Thank you so much, Dan. And we would like to congratulate you, Dan and Yash, for being the 2025 chair, being appointed as the chair and the vice chair. I'm missing Yash at this moment to congratulate him, and we appreciate your efforts and the contributions which you have made. So, heartiest congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to go to the KubeCon activities unless you have something else to be added on. Anybody else from this forum?
I'd just like to thank everybody that put their name out. Everything in open source works by volunteering, even though most of us are paid to be here by our companies. Still got to put in the extra effort, so I appreciate everybody volunteering. And Yash, you've earned yourself a new stand-up meeting each week, so we'll make sure that you get on the invite for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. About the announcements, Dan, is it something which you would like me to take over, or about the KubeCon?
I can run with this if you like.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Okay, so Salt Lake, the KubeCon North America is underway right now in Salt Lake, and that's where a couple of our colleagues are right now representing us. There's a sort of a bingo sheet that they put together with all of the confidential computing related talks, and it's really cool that there's more than just a couple. So there's it kind of shows the growing adoption and interest. There's at least a LinkedIn post from our consortium that's advertising this. If you haven't already circulated that with your networks, that would be great. The conference is underway, and so it's really timely for people to know what they can attend while they're there. This is just a different full depiction of that same information. And then we've also recruited between, maybe Yash, do you want to take this? The mentorships?
Sure, yes. Sal actually worked with the 3 projects that have submitted their project ideas. The first one being the ILET project, and now there is a mentorship opportunity to strengthen security through fuzz testing. I'm not sure if they've been added on the mentorship GitHub repo, but the next 2 slides also highlight the other 2 mentorship opportunities, which is Verizon for Codem support, and the other one is also Verizon for verifying the RATS standard. So yes, these are now available. I was supposed to work with Rian to add them to the LFX portal, but he's been occupied with KubeCon. So once he's back, we'll submit them to the LFX portal where hopefully we can start receiving Menti applications.
Excellent. Okay, and we're rolling segueing from that right into the new agenda items. So as part of our involvement in the Confidential Computing Summit, we've been offered a representative to sit on the program committee, and the goal of this representative is to make sure that conference is as much as possible community influenced conference, and that there's not an undue amount of let's say company presentations. So the person who picks this up is just supposed to make sure that there's a good objective selection of the papers and things of that nature. So I saw Fritz, Yash, and Mingshen put their hands up right away on the mail list. Is there anybody else that wanted to volunteer? There's only one slot, so I'm going to do sort of a dice roll off here in a minute. Okay, so across the three of you, like I said, we're going to settle this the old-fashioned way, Dungeons and Dragons style. I have 3d20 here, and we will go
Nice.
in the order of Fritz, Yash, Mingshen from clockwise from upper left here. So Fritz, Yash, and Mingshen. And looks like Mingshen got a natural 20. So
Nice. Congrats.
congratulations, Mingshen. And unfortunately, Mingshen isn't here to see that nat 20. What a shame.
That's double luck, eh? Not even seeing it.
Yeah.
That's like that's professionalism.
You didn't say you have to be present to win, Dan.
No, I didn't. Yeah. But maybe he gets to review double papers now with that nat 20. Okay, I better get myself out of D&D jokes and into our 2025 objectives. So I saw people go into the paper and drop their names into places, and but not yet everybody. And Paul reached out on Slack and has some ideas, and I think that's 100% what we want to do is talk through these things. So Paul, no real formalities here. But if you have some ideas that you want to jump into, or you want me to kind of preface things about how they're structured, just let me know what you want to do here.
Yes, well, yeah, thanks very much, Dan. So part of this is just me being characteristically timid, being a newcomer to the TAC, and not being quite sure about how to wade into this document. I had a specific question, right, which was around what we do in the OKR planning versus what we do around individual project growth plans, right? Because one of the things I was thinking of putting in the document was basically some Verizon community and project growth objectives. But I was wondering whether this is actually the place to do that, or whether a Verizon growth plan document would be the place to do that, right? So I wanted to get some advice from you, from this group, in terms of whether things centered around the growth of one specific project belong in the OKR document, or whether they belong somewhere else. This was the first thing I wanted to ask.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because each of us is ideally a liaison to one of the projects. And these are some of the things that we want the liaisons to do, which includes that growth plan that you alluded to. So I don't think I would put like a Verizon specific item here, but helping them build that is exactly what each of us is supposed to do as a should be liaison. Mentor is an old word.
Right. Okay. So does that mean then that if there are particular objectives and success measures, if you like, for Verizon, they don't belong in this document, they belong in a different document? That's what I think I'm hearing.
That's right. Yeah. So it'd be some Verizon document, maybe in their repo, maybe not in the repo, but
Right, so that was going to be my next question, right? If there are growth plan documents, do we have a place where those reside? Are they just tracked in the project repos, or are there Google Docs for these things?
That is a great question. We have the project growth plan as a item that's mentioned in our governance, but I don't remember what it says in here. So I think it would be that any of the links in here might lead you to
Okay.
more content, but I think the reality is that we haven't seen a lot of formal growth plans written, so it might be a little bit of paving your own way there.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Yeah, which potentially I'm willing to do. So, okay.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think of the projects as self-driven efforts, right? It's not up to the TAC to drive the priorities and objectives of the projects.
No, sure. I mean, I understand that, but Owen, hi Nathaniel, by the way, nice
Hey,
to
Paul.
hear from you. Yeah, so I understand the TAC doesn't drive the projects, but I was wondering whether the TAC might provide a space where the projects contribute their growth plans in a way that is uniform, right? So that, for example, if I wanted to read the growth plan for, say, Veracruz, for example, or one of the other projects, where would I go? Is there a place where I would go to read that, even though it's not owned by the TAC? There might be, the TAC might make arrangements to provide the space for these plans.
Yeah, I don't think we've done that. This was a little bit more elaborate if I'm remembering right, in the very early days of the CCC. And I think we just tried to simplify things, so there's not a lot of like templates, if I'm remembering right, but also these growth plans are meant to help progress a project through the stages of maturity, and we also simplified those last year, so they're still in here, but there's one fewer level. And so what a growth plan would probably look like is if you were to scroll through this document, you'd see the criteria, I think, for each of these stages. And so you'd want to look at those criteria and then try to think about ways that you would close gaps that you see there. And usually the main one is adoption. Yash?
Yeah, so on the 2025 TAC objective stuff, and I think we even had one for 2024, was a goal to track the community growth and health. Like our community is growing and healthy. It's on the Google Doc. And I don't know why we stopped tracking growth plans, but maybe what Paul is hinting towards is that maybe we should encourage projects to have them. Actually, I don't know how helpful that is. So, I'd like to hear more feedback from the team.
Yeah, so what I heard Paul ask specifically was putting the objectives for Verizon in here, and I don't think we want to do that, but we absolutely want Verizon to be able to progress, and so spending time as a liaison, so that way Paul is satisfying his responsibilities for these kinds of key results. That's all great. I think over and above each of our responsibilities for being a liaison, we want to plug in somewhere on projects, ecosystem, or community. And we don't, each of us need to have a separate objective or a separate KR. I think it is even better if we are partnering up. It's easier to track, it's more impactful if we're doing bigger, coarser grained items. So and this is for everybody's benefit, if you haven't written something and you see an activity that somebody else has written that you want to partner on, I think that's great. One thing that caught my eye is both Mingshen and Fritz have interests in reaching out to academia. And so there's two separate items here. One of them ended up in projects, and I think the other one ended up in ecosystem. So that's something that might end up consolidating unless these are really fairly distinct.
No, I was
Uh,
about to. I wanted to wait until we got there, but I was about to say the same thing, and I would even say both of them belong in community and not not in either of the ones they are in, because it's arguably rather that we like broaden our or want to broaden our community by including academia in it, right? That's at least how I would see it. But yeah, I mean, the grouping doesn't matter, but I would just like combine Mingshen's and my goal or objective into one objective in the community section.
Great. Yeah, I agree. Paul, before we get too far away from your questions, did you have more on there?
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to explore. So something that ARM has been investing in this year and will continue to do into next year is educational resources for developer communities. And one of the efforts that I'm leading that's connecting with that is trying to work with open source communities to create conveniently packaged and easily approachable demonstrator stacks. So for example, we've been spending some time in the Verizon project again, concentrating on using Verizon as like the fulcrum for some some RATS concept demonstrator pieces, right? So I don't know how well I'm expressing this, but the idea is that we create some reusable Lego bricks in open source that are aimed very much at comprehensibility over, if you like, function. So creating not pieces that are part of like production grade open source projects necessarily, but pieces that are designed to be deployed and understood, so that they demonstrate the concepts in a way that is functional, and then surfacing that via scripted guided walkthrough demonstrations. And ARM's got a learning portal where we're surfacing some of those things, but we're not working just within ARM, right? We're working in the open source communities to try to create these small Lego brick pieces. So I was hoping to enshrine that as an objective, because we're going to continue doing that work into next year. Nathaniel has said more than once that there is a big comprehensibility problem around confidential computing, and some of the work we're doing is aimed at addressing that. So my plan was to put a KR in here around, well, an objective around educating developer communities on confidential computing concepts. And the KRs would be things like, build a certain measurable number of small demonstrator stacks, and then have those be, exposed via suitable learning resources. And I wondered whether that would be a suitable OKR for this forum. And because I think it is community, it is collaborative. And by making it visible, I guess part of the idea is that we invite yet more collaboration, because I'd like to see more people and more communities investing in this sort of learnability of confidential computing, rather than just growing the big sort of production grade stacks.
So
yeah, I think last year we had like a.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think last year we had an objective or a key result that we didn't track to, about having more like reference and explainable outputs, so that people have an easier time trying to figure out how they adopt this. So off the top of my head, that's quick yes from me, but I think Nathaniel's going to jump in here with something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that it is well within the purview of the TAC to lead a sort of paper cuts / education style overarching project where we want to basically make it easier for people to kick tires on various different things. I would certainly be interested in contributing to that. I'm currently writing utility, which I haven't planned to go public with yet, but it basically follows the sort of Bootsy methodology from a Red Hat project to essentially launch containers as VMs to give people a very easy way to just get started with a guest and explore what confidential computing has to offer. So that could kind of like align with that, I think.
Yeah, that also sounds great.
Okay, so I think the action for me, so yeah, thanks, Nathaniel. That does sound great. I think the action for me then is I'll go into the document and I'll create an OKR. Sounds like I can probably use something from last year as a template for that, right? So it just sounds like a continuation of something that was already in flight. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Catherine.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I'm interested in that as well. I just want to mention that a large part of CC is not just the the confidential, the encryption of the bits, but also explaining sort of the value through things of services like attestation. What claims we can make that make sense, and how do we guard resources using these claims of a trusted stack and environment. So I would suggest also working with the attestation sake on that. I think that I feel like that it's a very essential and also pretty complicated part of the CC ecosystem. It would be good to have some education material on that.
Yeah, thanks. That makes perfect sense. And actually, attestation flows are one of the key things that we're looking at, building demonstrators around the various use cases of attestation. Given that attestation is pervasive across confidential computing, but the point at which you might do it and the reason why you might do it at that point, right, differs, and therefore the workflow would also differ. So it's about just exemplifying all of these different stages. You might do attestation in the early boot to decrypt the boot disk, for example, as a sort of blind hypervisor type of model, or there might be other points in time where you would do it. So, and we have some like template pictures around that, but it's working on actually making some real pieces of software that show it actually happening. But not necessarily have that be, a big framework open source piece, but have it be something smaller and bite-sized.
Yeah, that sounds really intriguing. Nathaniel, I was just kind of like playing back in my head what you had said about being able to easily launch a container into a VM. So there's the CNCF Cocoa project that does that. I'm just curious what was coming to mind for you that you were going to satisfy that maybe wasn't available in a project like that.
Yeah, the Cocoa project is about deploying containers into production. That is explicitly outside of the scope of this project, this is more about enabling people to, with access to the hardware plus this one simple tool, how can we build some guests to do either exploration of what it looks like to run inside a confidential computing guest, or to get an attestation report and evaluate its contents. So you can think of it as sort of another one is benchmarks. People want to be able to launch a benchmark. They don't want to build a whole infrastructure. They don't want to launch anything into production. They just want to get something running as quickly as possible with as minimal overhead as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. All right, I'm going to switch back to the 1,000-foot view here for a minute. So let me just see, did we pick up Howard or Henry or Kevin? Do not think so. Okay. So I'll have to reach out to that pair of folks offline and get them looped back in here. So Fritz, did we cover what you wanted to say, or is there some more to discuss there?
Paul, do you want to go first before I start that new topic? Or was it old time?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Mr.
No,
Paul.
it was just one brief addendum question, which was the 2025 plan. Is there does that get locked down at some point? How formally does this get like enshrined? Is there a point in time at which we want to say this is the 2025 OKR plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm happy to get everybody onto objectives and then objectives before the end of the year, and then I think the detail of the KRs can kind of sort out a bit in the early part of the year.
Okay.
Last year, we kind of took the whole first quarter before we had a plan, and that's not great because we missed a quarter of the year, arguably. So what I would really like to do is at the next board meeting, if not the November one, at least by the December one, is to go back with a very short list that looks something like this and be able to say to each of your respective board members, hey, this is where Mingshen's spending his time. Can you act that? And that way the board understands what the TAC's trying to deliver. Our board counterparts understand how they're supposed to be supporting us and what they are expecting of us through the year. And then we're all sort of able to progress.
Okay, great. And the board meeting for November has that already happened, or is that due to happen?
Somebody know the board meeting schedule? I think it's coming up, and there's a face-to-face option because it's at the same time as one of the Linux Foundation open source summits, maybe.
Okay.
I think it's in Napa, but I think
That's the
yeah.
18th, Dan. And I don't think the
Okay.
face-to-face thing worked out. So it'll be virtual.
Yeah. Okay, so virtual on the 18th then?
Okay.
So that's coming right up, like Monday.
Okay, so maybe on Monday I will have a preview slide for the board where they see what each of the TAC members is signed up to do.
Okay, so that's good. So based on the conversation we've just had, then I think I know what I can go into the document and draft some stuff. But it sounds like for Raison, we don't want that in here. We want that to be a project plan. Yeah, that's all good.
Okay, great. I don't know if this is already in chat, but there's the document link in chat. Catherine, I think you're signed up again for kernel-related activities. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy to. And I think we'll include the ARM this time also.
Okay, yeah. If you want to draft some KRs for the ARM kernel upstreaming, that's great. And then I think we have to figure out what more we can do to support that upstreaming, because it's good that we have the list. We've got the meeting series where we can get maintainers speaking in higher bandwidth and with maybe greater clarity than what they can do in the mail lists. But I feel like maybe there's something a little bit more we can do there. And I don't know off the top of my head what that is, but I want to make sure that we're actually, we've got actionable ways to accelerate the upstreaming.
Yeah, I need to think about that one. But yes, agree that we should provide more opportunities for folks to communicate and unblock if there are disagreements and help them align.
Okay. All right, before I get, why don't I grab Mingshen's here and drop it down into
Community, where it is already. I was 10 seconds ahead of you. I also was just
okay.
about to do the same. So at the bottom now.
Okay. You already pasted in?
At the bottom, yeah. Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
But not Mingshen's part yet. I was
Okay.
just about to do that. So just, yeah, perfect.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't think there. So feel free to comment on this, but anyone feel free to comment on this. But I mean, right now we seem to have quite a good number of talks coming in, so there's not too much to do in that terms, other than coordinating these and making sure we have one each time. But I also wouldn't drop this goal yet, just because yeah, let's see if we need to go out a little bit more in summer or something, because we also want to prevent a situation where for a few months we don't have any talk, right? So let's see how this develops, and then we can see to rewrite this for the next year, or for the year after. But I think right now it's going well with the talks, and then we can start to do some academic part of it.
Sounds good. Okay, I've made that adjustment there.
Nice.
Alec, I want to come back to you in a minute, because Mark mentioned that he needs to be out by the top of the hour. Is that okay? Okay, and that sort of relates in a way to what your topics are anyway. Oh, there was one last thing. Fritz, the PR that we talked about to add like criteria and mechanism for getting a tech talk.
Right.
That should be a pretty easy KR if you want to. It doesn't even have to be a KR, but
yeah. I mean, we can make it a KR if you want, but I would have just done it anyway.
yeah. So
yeah.
Either way, I just know we got yet another requests from the side, and then you write the whole long email about, you know, these
Yeah,
aren't
but so I already
product
started copying now, so it's, I think at some point I'll converge to having this anyway, and then yeah, no, we need some guidelines on this. So it's in my list, my to-do list, and it's gonna happen at some point. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mark, I will turn the floor over to you. For those who are not on the GRC SIG, there is a note out there about requesting our review, like a final review, to publish some documents.
Yeah. So, okay. So let me quickly walk you through what is expected here. And I just put a link in to a folder into the chat. And if you click on that, I will grant reviewer access to anyone who asks for it. So the GRC SIG has been working out how to create governance frameworks around confidential computing. And the way we went about it is we started with what would make a confidential computing system deliver on security expectations of its customers, and how can this be proven to auditors. And again, governance is a space that's not familiar to a lot of engineers. You know, you have to kind of work for a regulated institution to understand what it is. But ultimately, much like law is not about requiring, like it's not about fairness. Like we hope that law will be fair, but ultimately it's about following rules. Similarly with governance, it's not straight up about security. It's about saying, you know, articulate where you're supposed to go, and the standards, you know, like PCI, GDPR, they will kind of generally point you where you're supposed to be. Then you're supposed to articulate your policies. Then you're supposed to have governance levers in place to be able to ensure that you can steer your system towards compliance with these policies, and then you collect evidence about everything. So, again, we have a document that describes that. So we've been working on a set of patterns that we hope that if a customer were to follow them, and then they would have data and use protection. And the patterns are written in what's called a patterns language, which again, I can provide a reference on, but there are the context, which is, you will see you will encounter a problem if you find yourself in the following situation. Then there is a problem section that basically says, okay, here's the problem you will encounter. Forces section would be, this is what makes solving the problem difficult or challenging. And then there is a solution section that says, okay, well, do these things and the problem will be solved. And then we add additional things that references to the responsibility matrix. So let me perhaps, well, if you're driving, why don't you open the expectations of ecosystem participants first? That's kind of the first pattern. So we assert that in any confidential computing setup, you're going to have, the following classes of participants, and they have expectations of each other. And to the bottom right are the auditors, and they basically audit everyone, and everyone provides evidence to the auditors. And then there are other relationships in there. By the way, AVS is going to be replaced with verifier. So anyway, the other documents refer to this one. So you can go back. I have to go quickly, or I'm not going to be able to cover all the ground. We're not going to do the review here. So let's go with the first one, confidential payload governance. Let's talk about that one first. It's the bottom one. So again, no, the bottom one, yeah. So in there, again, you're going to see a context and a problem and some forces. And we talk about how do you govern your confidential payload throughout its lifetime. So to ensure optimal data in use protection, we cover everything from sort of effectively penetration testers' point of view. These are the kinds of things you would be paying attention to if you're trying to break open a confidential computing system. That if you scroll down towards the bottom, you will see that, and you'll see some comments still outstanding. But towards the very bottom of the document, you're going to see an interesting section that is the governance summary, right? So under the governance summary, and that's the table above this one, yeah. So the numbers in the left column refer to the expectations of ecosystem participants document that we first opened. And here you'll basically see general statements about the kinds of evidence that you are expected to provide to your auditor if you are to prove that you are in fact protecting your data and use properly. And it's written in a typical governance parlance, so it aims to be technology agnostic, fairly generic. As far as your choices are still up to you, how you do things. So I'll give you kind of an example that makes my skin crawl, but is an example of how governance is done. So for instance, if your requirement is that you are not running with a known vulnerability in production for longer than 14 days, there are a couple of ways you can handle that. You can say, okay, well, we will patch all vulnerable servers within 14 days. And that would certainly be the more secure option. The less secure option would be, we're just going to repave everything every 14 days. And technically, they're no longer continuously in production for 14 days, although it's the same bug. Right. So again, this is where we're hoping that with these governance patterns, we're going to put a somewhat higher standard. But again, that standard is not going to be what a penetration tester would consider bulletproof. So for instance, we're not going to require in governance patterns that every verifier is open source. And that's because it's ultimately up to the customer to decide what the nature of the trust relationship they have with the verifier. They just simply have to formulate and state clearly what their expectations are. And there could be contractual obligations. It could be, we're running our own verifier, or maybe, there will be monetary penalties in place or whatever. And then once you decide on what your trust relationship is, then you simply furnish evidence that you are in fact in compliance with your own policies. So again, I encourage a review of these documents. See if you have any suggestions for improvements. I suspect that they will continue to be living documents. As we learn more, we can update them. This is not going to be like a Bible or an RFC, but these are the kinds of documents that we will be supplying to regulated institutions, to standards bodies. So we work with the Cloud Security Alliance right now on the updates to the Cloud Controls Matrix. There was going to be an update published by middle of next year that, again, I'm happy to talk to the TAC about and explain what confidential computing related changes are expected in that. But yes, take a look, see if you have any suggestions on the way things are stated. Take a look at the governance summary section of every pattern to see if you understand what the governance expectations are going to be in terms of the evidence you collect, the evidence you present. And we can have more detailed discussions in this forum, or you can join the GRC SIG. Every other Wednesday, 7 a.m. Pacific, we meet, and there will be a couple of more governance patterns still developed, most notably break and inspect. If you are familiar with break and inspect, please reach out and let us know, because we need subject matter experts in how these sort of lawful intercepts are covered. All right, that's what I wanted to explain at this point.
Okay, great. And we're not going to do the review here, but since I saw
Right.
I made this comment some time ago, the thing that I was trying to get at is these bearer tokens are probably bad no matter what. The fact that they're put into a TEE doesn't make them worse. And I just thought that the phrasing here suggested that the TEE was the source of the weakness. And so I was just looking
The
for
reason we feel that bearer tokens have no place in T's is because tokens are a formulation of an identity, and identities for confidential computing need to be strongly bound to the workload. And if you're issuing bearer tokens to a workload and these tokens get stolen, then anyone in possession of the token can now impersonate your workload, and confidential computing guarantees are nullified. So it's not the fault of the T, it's the fault of how you choose to implement your authorization.
Right. And I was just sort of getting at the wording that the way it reads to me is that by putting them into a TE, that could lead to the token being leaked. Whereas the reality is
reward. I see what you're trying to say. I will take a look at rewarding this to make that clearer. But yes, absolutely. This is the kind of feedback we need.
Yeah, let's clearly identify the problem with symmetric versus asymmetric algorithms.
Sounds like another good thing to get into the document feedback. Let's try to have everybody take a first pass look at these before the next meeting. And I think we actually have a big gap because of Thanksgiving, US Thanksgiving. So we might want to try to reach some decisions offline so we don't end up pulling this all the way into the new year. So I'd encourage everybody to go take a look at the documents, and with a goal of making sure that they are mostly correct, and where we can help with wording or things like that, let's do that. If something is not mostly correct, then that might be a blocker for getting the document out in the near term. But I want to make sure that we're able to actually produce documents and avoid the whole perfect being the enemy of good. Make sense for everyone? All right, Mark, thanks for continuing to drive all of this. That's great.
All right.
feedback in the document as comments, like normal,
Yes.
or
Mhm.
mail list?
Yeah, I will give
Okay.
commenter access to anyone who asks for it. And the goal is to, we don't really have a fixed timeline. Quality is important here. So the goal still is to collect the feedback, get broad consensus, and then publish these as official TAC documents. But not until we're comfortable with the content and have good discussion.
Okay. Thanks again, Mark. All right, Alec, we were just about to come back to you, and you are slated up for basically GRC related things, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, I think I recall the key results from last time being about reaching out to specific bodies, regulators, and so forth. And that work is ongoing. So I think those key results can stand in the new year. There are a bunch of compliance organizations and standards bodies that we continue to need to bring into the fold. So I think I'm fine with those. One thing I really liked, Dan, was your idea to go back through our existing publications and kind of make sure that they're still fresh. That work really appeals to me. So which is completely separate from the GRC. I wouldn't mind adding a key result on that. So maybe you and I can work offline to come up with a joint key result for everybody in the TAC, and then folks can sign up for participating in that process. Or maybe you wanted to view it as everybody adopts a document, like adopt a highway kind of a thing, and cleans it up. Whatever you have in mind for that, I'd like to make that a kind of a separate key result and a separate discussion, and wouldn't mind volunteering for some of those activities.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I like that as well. And yeah, the adopt a highway thing is exactly what I was going for. Somebody takes ownership as editor or re-editor, and then is responsible for the next draft, and then everybody else can review as needed.
And getting back to your point on perfection being in tension with excellence, we can you can set a deadline as our esteemed TAC chair, and folks can get in their review comments, and we'll just go with the version on a specific date, and it'll be a .+1 version. And then as folks feel very strongly about the need for a comment that came in past the deadline, we'll just add another dot version and keep going.
Sounds great. All right, did we hit everybody who's present here? I believe so. Okay, so yeah, I'll try to distill from the document that we have some high level bullets for the board meeting on Monday, so that your board members can nod or look quizzically at what we are signed up for. But hopefully everybody's on the same page there. And with that, I think we get to move into a tech talk.
Okay.
So Piotr, I will stop sharing to give you access to present if you would like.
Okay, so let me share the screen. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, so let's get started. So my name is Piotr Sawicki. I work as a software engineer at Samsung R&D Institute Poland. And today I'm going to talk about the application provisioning mechanism that we have implemented recently in the scope of the ILET project. And before we begin, I have one technical note regarding the questions. I would prefer to take them at the end of the presentation. And so the agenda for today's talk is as follows. Firstly, in the introduction, I will briefly talk about the islet project and our main goals and key ideas behind the application provisioning design. After that, I will provide a high-level description of the provisioning architecture. Next, we will go through an example provisioning process, which help us better understand how it works. And finally, the last 2 points, namely the realm metadata and scenic key derivation, will cover our custom extension that we have implemented for the islet RMM. Okay, so let's begin with a quick overview of the islet project. So islet is a project that enables confidential computing on platforms that support ARM CCA. These are platforms equipped with CPU cores implementing RV9 architecture with additional realm management extensions. And the main components of islet are the islet realm management monitor that currently implements the RMM specification version 1.0-EAC5. And our islet RMM handles such things like virtual CPU context switching and stage 2 translation tables for confidential virtual machines. These are referred as realms, and it also provides API for realms, such as the API for retrieval of the attestation evidence. The other core component is the hardware for security module. It acts as a root of trust for attestation and plays a supportive role by providing secrets to islet RMM. And both components are written in Rust. And on top of our firmware stack, we develop functionality that is going to be used on end user devices because we are mainly interested in so-called on-device confidential computing. Okay. So now let's move to the main topic of today's presentation. So the main goal of our recent work was to implement a mechanism enabling provisioning confidential applications into realm virtual machines from some external application registries. As I said earlier, we are focusing on on-device usage, which means that we mainly target platforms like mobile devices and smart TVs. And you want to take advantage of the ARM CCA on these platforms. So in this case, you would like to be able to install confidential applications on demand, similarly as regular applications running in the non-secure world, and then utilize them for performing computational tasks that require protection of data in use. One of use cases could be running a proprietary machine learning model as a confidential application inside a realm. In this scenario, the applications running in the non-secure world could use that model for their purposes. The next important goal was to support offline mode, which means that once an application is provisioned into a realm, it should be saved into persistent secure storage for later use. So in that case, if the realm is restarted, the application can be launched from its persistent storage without the need of reprovisioning. And additionally, applications should be able to save their data produced or downloaded in runtime. The last requirement was that our solution should target Linux-based environments. This way, in the future, we could easily port it to Android or Tizen operating systems. Okay. And here are the main key ideas behind our design. So firstly, the realm content is split into 2 parts. One is base realm image that provides a lightweight Linux operating system running inside a realm VM. This operating OS serves as a host for provisioned applications. It contains a dedicated service responsible for the provisioning process. We call the service realm daemon. And the base realm image is kept in plain on the host side. And of course, in context of confidential computing, when it is launched, its memory content is measured to reflect the initial state of the realm in the attestation evidence. And the second part refers to confidential applications that are provisioned into the running base operating system. We have chosen the OCA standards for packaging the applications. It allows us to deploy applications ranging from lightweight to complex ones, containing multiple libraries and additional services. And of course, the provisioning process has to involve the remote attestation of the platform and the base RAM content. Here we utilize our custom implementation of the RATLS protocol that combines remote attestation and TLS. This protocol is used to establish a secure channel between the realm daemon running inside a base RAM OS and an external image registry. In this case, the external image registry takes the role of a relying party in RAT's architecture, and the realm and the underlying platform take the role of the attester. To support the offline mode, the applications and their data are stored in encrypted disk partitions kept on the host side. They are attached to a realm virtual machine via the virtual interface. What is important here is that data encryption keys are bound to the platform, firmware, and realm content, effectively implementing the concept of sealing keys. Okay. And here we have a diagram that depicts the high-level architecture of our solution. On the left side, we have our device. On the right side, we have external entities, such as the image registry that keeps the repository of confidential applications. The registry interacts with an external attestation evidence verifier. In our case, we utilize the Verizon project. It is worth to mention that our solution could also work with the VMware certified framework for confidential computing. We have an SDK that provides support for it. On the device side, we have depicted two parts, the host and the realm world. On the host side, we have our Varden daemon, which is responsible for setup of realms, including the initialization of application disk images, network configuration, and initiation of the application provisioning process. The Varden daemon exposes a management interface to client applications running on the host side. So in the future, this will be Android or Tizen apps. Currently, for experimentation and development purposes, we utilize a command line tool that acts as a client. As a realm guest, we run our base realm image that provides a lightweight Linux OS together with the realm daemon. And the realm daemon is responsible for the actual provisioning process. It takes care of a setup of secure storage, downloading, verification, and launching of confidential applications. And at the bottom of this diagram, we have our core components, namely the iLET RMM and our hardware enforced security module. These components, apart from providing security to the whole CCA stack, produce attestation evidence and sealing keys required for secure storage. Okay, and now let's dive into the example of the provisioning process. Here, the Varden daemon launches realm VM using a previously prepared configuration. Basically, it loads the base realm image containing our custom Linux distribution with an attached newly created empty disk image. After the guest Linux boots, the realm daemon is launched, and during its initialization, it retrieves the sealing key from the iLET RMM. This key will be used in further key derivations. Then the realm daemon establishes a connection to the Varden daemon through the virtual socket interface to inform that it is ready to receive a provisioning request. After receiving the provisioning request, the realm daemon setups the application image partition. Then the realm daemon establishes a secure RATLS channel with the image registry. And this process involves remote attestation of the platform and the realm content. And the evaluation of the attestation evidence is done by the Verizon verification service. And when the secure channel is successfully established, the application image is downloaded and its authenticity and integrity are checked. And after successful verification of the image, the application's content is extracted into the application image partition. Next, the realm daemon sets up the application data partition. It will be used by the application to store its runtime data. Next, to make a unified view of the file system for the application, an overlay FS is configured on top of the image and data partitions. And here we have a detailed view of the overlay FS setup. The application image is used as a read-only partition and the application data as a read-write partition. Of course, both partitions are encrypted using the Linux dmcrypt subsystem. And right before launching the application, a selected realm extensible measurement slot is updated using the measurement calculated from the application. This step is needed to reflect the current state of the realm in the attestation evidence. And finally, the application is launched. And when the application is running, it also can be provisioned with confidential data. And in the process that requires remote attestation. Okay. So the next points will be about our custom extensions that we had to implement for our realm management monitor. So the first one is the realm metadata mechanism. This is basically a cryptographically signed structure that provides identity, authority, and versioning information about a particular realm. Currently, it is used in the sealing key derivation process to produce stable keys that are immune to realm updates. And the realm metadata can also be used to implement a verified boot process of a realm image. This functionality might be important on mobile platforms where we want to have greater control on what is actually launched as a base realm image. And the second extension is the sealing key derivation mechanism. It is also currently missing in the RMM specification. Now we will briefly explain how it works. So firstly, during the startup of the platform, the hardware enforced security module gathers measurements of the IRAT RMM and other firmware components. And these measurements, the security lifecycle state and the hardware unique key, are used as an input key material to derive two keys. The first one is the measurement-based virtual hardware unique key that is bound to the exact binary measurements of the firmware. And the second one is the authority-based virtual hardware unique key. That is bound to the verified boot authority and identity of the firmware components. Next, when the IRAT RMM is initialized, it retrieves both the virtual hardware unique keys. And during the initialization process of realm, IRAT RMM measures the realm's content. And when it is about to launch the realm, it checks if the realm initial measurement value calculated online is the same as that provided within the cryptographically signed realm metadata structure. In runtime, the services running in a realm, like for example the realm daemon, can fetch realm sealing keys from RMM. We have implemented an additional interface for that, which is fully customizable. For example, we can derive a key that is bound either to the measurements or identity data of a realm. And the services can perform further key derivation from the provided realm sealing key. In the case of realm daemon, it uses the application identity authority data to derive a data encryption key that is bound to a particular application, realm, and a platform. Okay, and future work, we plan to harden the security of our solution, firstly by implementing a rollback protection mechanism. This will prevent from downgrading of applications and realm images to older, possibly vulnerable versions. And this mechanism will require hardware support. For example, we will need a dedicated eMMC chip that implements a replay protected memory block to keep the versioning information. And other feature that we are interested in is the migration of confidential applications between end user devices. So basically, we'd like to handle a case when a user buys a new smartphone and wants to transfer all applications and data from the old device to the new one. And we have some initial thoughts about how it can be done. So we will probably need to perform a mutual remote attestation of both the source and destination devices. This process will require assistance of some external migration agent that acts as a relying party in ROT's architecture. And we think that this process also will require end-to-end encryption to be able to securely transfer applications and data from the source to the destination device. And this was my last slide. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?
I think Fritz had a question. I don't know if you still have a question, Fritz.
Yeah, you partially responded to it a little bit in the last slide, but can you elaborate a little bit more on the ceiling? So, yeah, Dan also had one. So let me just try to bundle the all of them in one block. So, you did mention that kind of rollback attacks are not there yet, but you did mention that it could be a future work to add that with some hardware, right? So,
yes.
And you derive the keys in the beginning from your hash, right? So that I think is also then responding a little bit to Dan's question. But can you say a little bit more about client devices? And so is it a realistic assumption for your future work that you have this replay protected memory available? Or what would you have to do on client devices, future client devices, that is realistic to achieve that? And then I also had a little bit side question, whether it uses AES XTS or what you use, because you also want authenticity, I guess, from the realm, right? It's not enough to just have integrity.
Yes. So maybe I will answer the last question. Currently, we are using AES. It's CTS, but we will probably it's configurable, and we'll use AES XTS, and also we plan to enable DM Verity to provide the mechanism that protects the data from sorry, it enables the integrity checks for in the DM encrypted partitions. And when it comes to the first question, basically we don't have hardware yet, but because RMCCA, what we use emulator to run the whole stack currently, and probably in the future we plan to maybe not design, but be involved in the design of the hardware, of the target hardware, which will be used to on mobile devices, and that provides this replay protected memory block memory.
Thanks. I see. But so that can also so I have I think a good picture of what you could use there, right? You have all of these shenanigans you can do for monotonic counters. You can have extra hardware, etc., etc. But so what I was trying to, because I don't know anything about client devices. So what is hard for me to estimate is how expensive are those, and is it realistic to even put them on a smartphone, or because this is for client devices, the idea, right? So will this be so expensive that it's not only be realistic on I don't know, the top
I think
end,
it's
or is it
realistic
fine?
because currently I don't know, TV sets are equipped with eMMC hardware that support the RPMB protection. So I think it's realistic.
Interesting. So the limitation is maybe like only a few realms for cheaper devices, and then larger devices have
Okay.
more realms or something. But then I guess you can have this on all the ranges, is what you're saying.
As far as I know, currently smart TV sets are equipped with such a memory, with authenticated memory. So basically, that implements this rapidly protected memory block.
Interesting. Thanks. Cool.
Okay. Do you have another?
Maybe you've answered this, so sorry if this is not a great question, but the ceiling here, this is something that you've added as part of Islet, or ceiling is a built-in feature of CCA?
No. Actually, we had to add it to Islet. We have designed all this mechanism this year. So there is in the ARM CCA. I don't remember the name of the title of this document, but there is one document that mentions that it is possible to implement keys that would be used for derivation of disk encryption keys. But the current RMM specification doesn't provide such a mechanism. So we had to implement it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Piotr? And I'm trying to think, were there some specific things that your community wanted feedback from the TAC on? I think when Bokduk first reached out to schedule this, I think there were some open questions that maybe there was an interest in some best practices for.
Maybe we are interested in maybe you will provide us some, I don't know, you will point us to some projects that utilize similar technologies like this sealing key mechanism or data encryption, because when it comes to this security hardening task, we'd like to make some investigation about the other technologies that uses the same or similar mechanisms. So is it possible or not?
Say again the question part of that.
Maybe we would like to know if there are some projects which utilize a similar mechanism like this one implemented in our, like this sealing key derivation.
Okay, is anybody on the call? Does that ring a bell for anybody? Anybody familiar with the project that Isla?
Yeah, Ijlal here from Ubuntu. As you're presenting, Piotr, I'm seeing so many similarities with the ongoing work we have to make Ubuntu Core confidential computing ready. And Ubuntu Core is an immutable OS targeted for IoT devices. The applications, we provision them not as OCI images, but as snaps, which are just, an application with all of its dependencies, basically.
Okay.
So I would very much like to connect you with the people working on that project. There must be some learnings across both teams that we can take from each other. And the
Okay.
ceiling conversation was super interesting because we're struggling with that, and some of the assumptions we're making about that working would depend on hardware. So yeah, that's it's good to see that there is hope in that being available at some point in time.
Okay, thank you for that information. It's interesting.
And you said it was something core. I missed that.
It's Ubuntu
Gisela.
Core. It's another offering of Ubuntu. Ubuntu Classic, we call it. It's what everybody runs on desktops and servers. And Core is the distribution of Ubuntu that is targeted at IoTs as an immutable distribution. We have DM Verity, by the way, as well. We have full disk encryption, TPM backed, all that good stuff.
Oh, nice. That's nice.
All right. What's a great connection to have made here? Any other questions or comments for Piotr? All right, I think we are ready to move on then.
Okay, thank you very much. Again.
All right, dziękuję.
Dzięki.
Okay, so let's get back onto the. Oops. One second here to refresh the slides. There we go. Okay, so the last thing for today is just to look to the end of the year, which is really, we only have one meeting left. We've got 2 tech talks lined up for that, so it might be a fairly dense meeting because I think we'll also want to finalize the OKRs, or at least the objective portions of those. Is there anything else people were expecting to hit before the end of the year? I guess maybe one very related thing is the 2024 KRs. We want to be able to do like an end of the year report. That's like one of the first things we send out in the beginning of January. So please go in and make sure that you've commented or otherwise marked up your 2024 activities so that we've got a good list of things that we can brag about as our accomplishments for this year. And then we'll finalize these 2025 objectives on December 12th, and then that'll be it for the end of the year. And I think we talked about when we resume last time. Let me just go grab a calendar for myself to look at. Our first meeting back is tentatively January 9th. We do tend to have a lot of people that still have some New Year's activities and stuff through the first part of January. So it's possible we'll set our first meeting actually for the 23rd of January and have a rather long break. Does anybody have a preference there? Silence. I'm going to lean towards the 23rd just because I have myself some travel that week of January 6th through the 10th.
I think that makes
And
sense, Dan. Even those of us that are going to be back by then will have email blizzard we're digging out of. You'll have both kinds of blizzards, but those of us in the South will just have the latter.
Sounds good to me too.
Okay.
Just a little bit
All right.
past this schedule, don't forget we've got FOSDEM as well coming up beginning of February. So by the time we come back, we really only have two meetings before then.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, Nathaniel. Thanks for that.
And the FOSDEM CFP also closes in about 2 weeks. So 2 weeks is also a good time now to work on your FOSDEM proposal if you want to submit one.
another important reminder. All right, any last announcements? Reminders? Okay, so please go ahead and get your objectives thought through, and that'll be probably the principal thing for the next time we talk, along with those 2 tech talks, and that will be it for us for the year. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Dan.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks,
Bye.
John.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.